Hello and welcome to the Claret podcast. It's time for our Monday show. I'm your host, Dan Rolinson. I'm joined by a special guest, a returning face, somebody who I've not seen for a while on the podcast. It's James Rushton. James, how are you, pal?
Yeah, I've been in hibernation over the winter, enjoying Aston Villa from the comfort of like a burrow. Yeah, I'm good, enjoying it all, and enjoying watching from the sidelines and in the stands as Villa do exceedingly well. We're all in dreamland, right? It's good.
Mm-hmm. And across Europe as well. You say you're in a borough, but you've been here, there and everywhere. And we'll talk about Zrinjski last star in a little bit as well. It's been unbelievable, hasn't it, so far this season? I'm still kind of struggling to wrap my head around it. We tend to say that the post-match show on a weekend, we obviously do them live and it's very raw and it's just, I've literally just got back from the game. This is what I think, as I write this second, and the Monday show tends to be a bit more of a deeper analytical look at either a specific game or the wider talking points around Villa. But since Saturday, I still can't get my head around what we did last week. To beat Man City and Arsenal back-to-back 1-0s, two very different games, but two brilliant results over the space of, 4 or 5 days. That's not an Aston Villa I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, Wednesday was crazy. When I was trying to write up about it after the match, I felt like my IQ had dropped below deck. On the taxi back, I've got a method of getting back from Villa games really quickly. And it's been key for these midweek fixtures. Absolute. I'm not giving it away because it's mine alone, and my girlfriend's. But I digress. Get on the taxi back. I couldn't get the directions to my own apartment right. He's an Uber driver, right? He's got the mapped out, but he was asking me left or right, Mr. James, and I was like, I couldn't tell him. I was telling him to go down the wrong way, down the one-way system in Birmingham City Centre. I was getting him off at the wrong exits and everything, and I was not. The delirium was very real because I do remember going. It felt like you all the endorphins just poured into your head and you didn't know what to do with them. Very, very real madness, Dan. Really, one of the most enjoyable matches of all time in my experience of following Villa. No stress, just what.
And against even if that game was a convincing home victory against even the Newcastle game last year at Villa Park, that was unbelievable, wasn't it? Obviously, we scored more goals that night, but we dismantled a really good side that day. But to do it against the champions, the treble winners, how good Man City are. I know you've got the little asterisk next to it for no Rodri and no Doku and no Grealish and that kind of stuff, but even so, they're a bloody good side without those, and should have more to give than they did that night to constrict them to 2 shots on target, and that was on the 11th minute in a double save effectively from Martinez, and nothing after that. Nobody that I can remember has dominated Pep Guardiola's Man City in that way that I can remember in recent years. There will be the odd occasion here and there, but I saw this from Man City fans on social media afterwards. I know obviously we're going to talk about Arsenal in a little bit, but it's been a mad week. They were saying that even the battles they've had with Liverpool over the last few years, they've never seen themselves, Man City, be dismantled by an opposition the way Villa did. Because the games against Liverpool are always fairly tight, or they'll both kind of give each other a really good game and they'll have chances. For Man City to come to a stadium and not have any chances after the 10th minute is ridiculous. And that wasn't that Man City were poor or Man City had a bad day at the office. Villa made them that way. Villa's game plan dismantled Man City.
Yeah, I remember seeing some of the big City versus Liverpool kind of decisive fixtures, and I will say that Liverpool have obviously shown massive energy and dynamic play against City in a way to kind of try and dismantle them. But City have always been at their best to play around, through and over that. Whereas I think on Wednesday night, there's the asterisk that they're in a bit of a rut at the moment. And Villa did dismantle them. But Man City in a rut is still enough to put away the best Aston Villa sides. Probably. Yeah, and even Aston Villa on their day, it should theoretically be enough. And that's the difference now, is that it's not enough anymore. Yeah. Pep, you have to be better. Especially at home, with the way Unai's got the crowd and the players, especially players like John McGinn, who show that energy from the stands on the pitch, the passion that you love to see. Can't measure it, but that player who plays through the crowd or plays from the crowd and is you on the pitch, you have to be better. And asterisk whatever I don't think it necessarily needs one. We still beat a very good City side. If you knocked out Muhammad Ali, put him down at the end of his career, it doesn't matter. You still knocked him out, haven't you? You still got the win over one of the greatest footballing dynasties of all time, one of the greatest footballing managers of all time. Whatever's happening when you follow the money, we don't care. But you've beat that team very fairly in your house. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We love it. And the post-match show that we did on Wednesday night was that same delirium that you had heading home in your Uber journey. It was just, what the hell just happened? A record amount of viewers live on the evening. A record amount of, well, not a record, but loads of people have watched that episode last week, which I'm very grateful for, by the way. And then to follow that up with Arsenal, I mean, me and Frankie spoke on the post-match show for Bournemouth, which was, I mean, that's turned out to be a good point now. And to be fair, I said at the time it was a good point. We were losing heading into the 90th minute. You get a point from there, it's a good point, whoever the opposition. They've won 4 out of 5. When you see the graphic of their recent results, it's Villa in the middle that they drop points to. So that's a decent result. We kind of joked about, it's a massive week coming up. Like, what's the points total? And I said, is 6 points impossible this week? Because it's such a big task to play Arsenal and Man City, even though it's at home and we're impeccable at home. It's still who that opposition is. It's still going to be very difficult. And Frankie said, well, it's not impossible, but if we were to do that, God forbid, like, imagine if we did, what a statement that sends out to the league. I always felt that we might lose the Man City game and beat Arsenal. That was my prediction for the week, 3 points, and I'd have been delighted with that, by the way. I think 3 points would have been a great return. But because we beat Man City first and kind of got that one out of the way, that sets you up and gives you the momentum to then go into the Arsenal game, which is, I felt, the easier of the two, marginally. That you've got that springboard to go and say, oh, we beat Man City 3 days ago. Why can't we go and do that against Arsenal? So the fact that we've done it again, another 1-0 in a very different way, in a very different game. Villa were probably second best through spells of that game. We've already spoken about this on the post-match show, but it wasn't this attacking, dominating, free-flowing football that we used to, that we saw on Wednesday, that we didn't dominate Arsenal, we didn't blow them to pieces, but we found a way to win in a different way. And that's what the top teams do. That's what Man United under Ferguson did for 20 years. How many times have you looked at a result or looked at a game and thought, they're not even really in this, but they won 1-0 again. They're still top. They're still up in the top 4. They're just relentless. They keep going. And that's what the top sides do. And that's, again, something we've not seen from Villa. You maybe put so much effort into the Man City game that, come on, we look tired against Arsenal. We look leggy in periods after about half an hour. Some players looked like they're probably done here. I think Emery said after that Tielemans and Bailey were like asking to be subbed off because they were knackered, which is absolutely fair enough. We've put a shift in over 2 games there. But we could very easily have succumbed to that tiredness and lost on Saturday or drawn the game. So the fact that we managed to just find a way and get that kind of inner resilience to come out and get over the line and get the job done shows 2 very different ways to win those 2 football matches. And that's something that I find seriously impressive from Villa. Yeah,
I think just, the dominance on Wednesday, but also just being able to rise to what a championship, not the championship, but a title fight quality team, champions elect, like Liverpool, what the levels they're able to bring to Villa Park. And you've had that game Wednesday where you've given everything and you're not able to dominate or even be very, very good. You're able just to match them and just hold them off, get the goal and hold them off in a physical battle. Arsenal fans will say whatever they like about the result. If it was normal circumstances, they should be putting us about 4-0 in February, mate. It's there. We are there for the taking, and we were there for the taking since Wednesday. We are not anymore. It's a different game now. It's changed dramatically since the Bournemouth game, the landscape of the league, what Villa have done, what they're able to do. Unai Emery raised the bar. He raised the bar again. He raised the bar again. He continues to raise the bar. On Saturday against Arsenal, it's almost like you could forgive the loss for what happened on Wednesday. But also there was a thing like, we've beat City. We should beat Arsenal, really. Mm-hmm. And there's always a level of inside you, that battle of, we're Aston Villa, we should accept it, versus we could have beat them, and you'd have been almost disappointed in the sense, and you'd have had that conflict inside you, which is bizarre after everything we've been through. Everything we spoke about and talked about.
If we had a loss against Arsenal, you'd have had that initial tinge of disappointment of what could have been, but you'd have still reflected on it of, this is still a good week. A lot of people were considering those 2 games to be free hits. To come out with 6 points it's just totally changed my perception of what can be achieved as a supporter. Yeah. I think we've had far too long of kind of playing the underdog a little bit, of just like, we're not as good as them, so we'll probably lose, and just writing games off before a ball is even kicked. I don't think I can do that anymore. We do score predictions for every game, and I think I've predicted Villa to not lose all season. Most weeks I'm predicting Villa to win, and I always will do that. I'm a Villa fan. We go into every game, and I'll make a prediction, and I'll back us. Some of the time I don't believe it, and I'll just think, I'll say we're going to win here because I want to be positive. And there is games, and over the years there is games you'll go into it and you think, we're not as good as who we're playing today. Like, we're probably going to lose, whether that's home or away. I don't think that's the mentality we should be having anymore, particularly at Villa Park. Anyone that comes to Villa Park now, I will be thinking, we'll beat these. And because that's the mentality that's been instilled upon us by Unai Emery, that we're allowed to dream again. We're allowed to believe again. Like Emi Martinez said in his post-match interview, I'm a believer, mate. Yeah, so am I now, thanks to Unai Emery. Any game we play, I believe Villa can win because we've seen that this week.
Yeah, and if Villa, say, were to lose a game going forward, you'd be reasonably accurate if you held the belief that they'd lost fair and square. They weren't robbed or, I think to beat a Villa team now, you have to be right up for it. And, you probably looked at that Bournemouth game and we weren't at it. But like you said, Bournemouth's form matches Villa's entirely. If we're talking about Villa being great, that point at Bournemouth looks brilliant, like you said. But a team coming to Villa Park will have to raise those levels significantly. So the hope is, if that incredible 15 and counting sequence at home ends, it ends ideally fairly and squarely without Villa being robbed, which isn't, or just battered. Play it fair and square.
It's going to be an interesting dynamic when we lose that game at home, because let's face it, we're going to lose a game at home at some point. I think we've matched Pep Guardiola's record for Man City. I think they've won 15 home games in a row before. I think the record might be 24 off the top of my head. I've seen it somewhere. I think Sky posted it probably on Saturday night. I'll try and find that when you answer me in a second. Are we going to beat the record of 24? It's going to be a huge task to do that. But again, like I just said, I fancy us to beat anybody at Villa Park. The next couple in particular to round off 2023 at home are Sheffield United and Burnley, which, come on, they're both in the bottom three. Like, if you're not predicting Villa to win both of those and extend this winning run at home to 17, you'd be going against the bookies not to predict Villa to win. But I'm fully aware of how football works, that this brilliant home record could come to a close against Sheffield United on a Friday night and they beat us 1-0 and we go, Christ, that's annoying. But I hope that the dynamic that when that does happen is not that, what an opportunity missed, what a terrible defeat. Let's say it was Sheffield United, I'm going to boo that. I hope we get a standing ovation from every single corner of the ground when we lose that home game because of what they've done before it.
Yeah, 15. I saw a lot of people just marveling at the 15, and rightly so. But there's also people going, this can continue for ages. And I think you have to appreciate the fact that 15 is wild for Villa.
Yeah,
wild. The fact that we've never had a massively deep team of top tier talent that you can rotate and just coast through Europe, coast through the Premier League games, almost automatically like a Man City in their day. By the way, not on Wednesday, but the fact that Villa have never had that kind of ability to do so, and even quite now that the depth maybe isn't there, and they're still doing it. 15 since the Arsenal game in February and counting. You do think, how far can this go? 24 is a lot though. Like 15 is almost the full 19 you get at home for the season. 24 is a season and then some. And that is, I don't want to say it's beyond us, because you'd have thought 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15 would be beyond us. It does max out at some point, and that's the reality of the situation. But until it does, no excuses not to be in absolute dreamland and appreciate what's going on. No reason to complain. No reason to boo.
No. Definitely
it's
not.
Just enjoy. People behind me still moaning at the Arsenal game. Like, this is what you get when you got no right wing. John McGinn's on the. It's like, 15 and you've paid. I know I'm not a fan of paying ticket prices versus quality, but I feel like the money's worth argument is very much at its maximum right now.
Yeah, Matt said this on Saturday. I know the ticket price has gone up. We've won every game. We're getting what we paid for, essentially. I have found that the statistic is obviously Aston Villa now with 15. Pep Guardiola did 15 with Man City in 2023. Man United did 19 under Ferguson in 2010-11. Man City again under Mancini did 20 in 2011-12. And Liverpool under Klopp have got the record with 9 in 19-20 in the 2019-20 season with 24 wins. Obviously across the calendar years, obviously there's more than 19 home games there, so it's not the 2019-20 season. From 2019 to 2020, they won 24 consecutive home wins. What'll be interesting is if Villa can't extend the winning run, it'd be very good to have an unbeaten run at least. That if we are to drop points at home, you draw and you just keep an unbeaten run going. When we did our predictions in the summer, we all talked about how important the home form was going to be, and I said you want to be winning 14, 15 games at home and going as close to unbeaten as you can. Villa are obviously on course at the moment to do that, having won all 8 games at home. And you can set up a great season by having a great foundation at home by winning the vast majority of them. So we're on 15 at the moment. Sheffield United would be game 16. Burnley would be 17. Then Newcastle would be 18, which is a night game, by the way, 7:45 at the end of January. That's tasty, isn't it? 19 would be Man United at Villa Park in February, which Emery's done it before, but again, 2 big tasks there to extend it past 17, having to beat Newcastle and Man United. Forest would be 20, Spurs would be 21, Wolves would be 22, Brentford would be 23, Bournemouth would be 24 to equal the record, and then Chelsea at the back end of April would be 25 to have to break it. So we've got to win every game at home till the end of April to beat the record for successive home wins, which again feels very, very unlikely. But weirdly, as mad as this week has been, not impossible, because as we've said, nothing is now impossible given what Unai Emery has done.
It's a winning run, not an unbeaten run. So
yeah,
imagine Sheffield United score two good goals. Set up solid. They're fighting for their lives. They score 2 fair goals. Villa fight hard tactically back. They get 2 back. Last minute equaliser. Brilliant game. You fought. You went from no points, disappointingly no points, to gaining a point against a team who have more to lose than Aston Villa. And your winning streak's over, but your unbeaten streak carries on. And it's how do you feel then?
I think you've just got to be proud. When the day comes that Villa lose at home or drop points at home, you've just got to be proud and take stock and remember what the hell just came before it, that you've been to Villa Park, or hopefully that you've been to Villa Park for 15, 16 games prior and saw Villa win every single time. And you've got to think, okay, we've lost today, but Christ, look what we've just done.
Start the next one at Burnley.
Exactly, yeah. Start a new winning run. I think that's the thing. Yeah, if it comes to an end, but then you go and win the next 5 or 6 in a row, and you keep doing that, you're going to be very good, aren't you? Right. Let's move on to some questions. Then we've done 15 minutes or so of Arsenal and Man City as a bit of a roundup. We're now going to move into audience questions as we do every Monday. So thank you very much for people getting involved over the weekend. Anthony says, we've rode our luck a few times this season, especially over the last 5, Spurs, Bournemouth and Arsenal. What is top of Unai's list in terms of performance improvement for the second half of the season? Well, it's mad, isn't it, to think that we're talking about performance improvement given we're 3rd in the league and we've just done what we've done this week. But I suppose the easy answer is pick up a couple of more wins on the road. And I know we've just had 2 of them, but more clean sheets as well is obviously going to be very useful.
Yeah, I think you go back to that Bournemouth game and how people took it in a very Jekyll and Hyde way, in that it was points lost versus points gained. I think hindsight shows it being an extremely, extremely good point. But in the away form over the last 8 games, Villa are 9th. That's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. And it's okay given how good the home form is.
Yeah, and what separates 9th from top is 5 points. So a win, 2 wins. That's all you have to add to get top. So Villa are like in the mix. It's their home form. It's not carrying them, but the home form's given them such a good foundation to kind of find their feet away. They're only two free results from turning that around. So I've got absolutely no worries. You just got to pick up more draws and losses. Maybe you can't find the win, but maybe you need to find a way to just stop the loss. That's probably it for me. But again, performance is hard. It's just the fitness of trying to keep up with these games. Maybe that's the real problem. What touchwood. But injuries happen. Football is relentless. They will happen in training, in match. Just depends on who they happen to and how Villa can respond, because injuries to that midfield would be very tough, I think, to take.
As good as Spurs were for the first 7 or 8 weeks of the season. They get ravaged by injuries and suspensions and go without a win for 3 or 4. And obviously they beat Newcastle over the weekend pretty convincingly. But these things happen in football, and eventually they are going to happen to Villa. Suspensions are going to happen. Douglas Luiz missing Brentford is a big loss, and maybe we lose against Brentford because we don't have as much control without someone like Luiz in there. But if Villa can manage those situations like suspensions and be lucky when it comes to being injury-free, there's absolutely no reason why Villa don't have the quality on the pitch and the management team off it to mount a top 4 charge or a title push or whatever you want to call it. Good times are rolling for Villa. Plenty of questions to go, but we're going to take a little break here so I can refill my coffee cup. So we'll be back after this short break.
Yeah, good idea, mate.
Okay, back with the questions then. We'll stick with some serious football ones for now. Jay says, is Konsa, Carlos and Pau Torres more effective than Cash, Konsa and Pau Torres? Which kind of system do you prefer more? Konsa pushed over to right back with Carlos in there, or Cash out wide and Konsa back in his better position at centre-half?
It's crap answer, but why not both? We're a very flexible team. Cash can look weak and perhaps overly aggressive, as Spurs fans may attest to, on a few games and be caught out, but then he comes in against Arsenal and he's a man mountain, throwing himself into challenges, giving the energy at the back. I'm easy. Like, people don't like seeing Konsa at right back, but it's not really, Villa are doing their own thing. It's not the very traditional kind of positions. It's not because Konsa's at right back on the lineup that he is simply cemented at right back and thus right wing back, right wing. He's filling in at centre back. He's doing all sorts of things. It's a very flexible system. You see how far Torres gets forward. Is he just a centre back? No, he's not just a centre back. It's a flexible system. I would say defensively, you probably expect more solidity out of Konsa,
Carlos.
Torres. Too many similar names there to be thrown out. But with Matty Cash, again, you get the energy to attack a team. It's not kind of more so sponging them up and playing out through the back. You saw those two kind of in the Arsenal match. Kind of there's only so much for so long you can invite that pressure and play out of it. Arsenal were kind of making the game their own until Emery made his changes, and they bring kind of Dendoncker, who was very solid in that match, and Cash provides that bit of energy and probably that little bit of recklessness you probably needed to just make a snap decision and act on it, to just give Arsenal, some cause for concern for going down that side. The solidity is in the formula with Konsa.
Yeah, it's horses for courses, isn't it? Sometimes you want that extra solidity. Sometimes you want Cash bombing forward and overloading that right-hand side. I prefer Konsa playing centre-back than right-back because he's a better centre-half than he is full-back. But obviously, he's dropping into a more central position anyway. But when he's tasked with tracking the winger and running the channel as a right-back, I prefer Cash doing that because he's more mobile, has more energy, and Konsa is a better defender. But one-on-one defending from Konsa, that slide tackle against Man City last week, unbelievable. Yeah. And if he's at centre-half, he's more likely to be doing things like that. Ricardo asks, pick one player from the current squad to sign a lifetime contract, and of course they actually stay for life. The release clause is 500 billion. Who are you picking? Who do you never want to see leave Aston Villa?
There was three instant names, like immediately to that question. Okay. So this is going to be difficult. One was John McGinn, for real. Like, he's Mr. Like, there are two Mr. Aston Villas in my three names, but John McGinn is Mr. Aston. Like, he's the club on the pitch, the fan on the pitch, and he's brilliant. He just gets getting better. You write him off and he gets better. The energy. People can't deal with him. How can you not deal with him? Just getting in.
We said on Saturday, like, as much as he's not known for putting his backside into people and holding the ball up and holding the player with him, like Dan Burn for the Newcastle game last year, backing into somebody and holding the ball. He looks stronger this year, moving with the ball as well. And his physical upper body strength to hold people off as he's running seems to be improved. I don't know whether that's just a placebo of that Villa are more fluid with the ball now. We're seeing more of it, but I was just associating McGinn's strength with his kind of hold up and backing into people. I now associate McGinn's strength with dribbling with the ball and holding off players and brushing past them. That's something that I've not feel like I've seen from him before. Yeah,
it's like the game's a Rubik's Cube to him, and he just does it. Like, he can't do anything else except the Rubik's Cube. He's got like the one really good move. He's brilliant. Like, he's just so unorthodox and simple. as a footballer. Like, he's
Yeah,
not
so
doing
good to
anything
watch.
very hard. But like, when three people press him, that's when the situation becomes hard, and he finds a way out. It's
He
incredible. It's like
makes
he's
it look
playing.
easy though. He's doing difficult things, but he makes it look easy.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely one. And I haven't put Douglas Luiz in there because I don't want to have four names and be an idiot. But the second one was Martinez. Like,
Yeah,
if McGinn left, I think, he fits a profile for a lot of good teams that would want him and could probably spend a lot of money on him. Luiz is very similar, but he's more attractive. Not in how he looks.
physically.
He is. I'm sorry, John. But I think he fits if John McGinn fits a profile for the amount of teams, Douglas Luiz probably fits it for that amount of teams. Martinez can fit in any team, which is scary.
Yeah.
And there's a very real. I think he's very cemented and loves the club, but his ambition is so high, and he's got a chance to do great things here with Villa. And I would never ever want to be in that category of people who sell Villa players. But Martinez, I guess what I'm trying to say is Martinez is probably the one I'm most scared of losing, because I feel like I think you can get a better goalkeeper, but a better personality.
Yeah, he's got best of everything, hasn't he? I think with his ambitions, if Villa were to win, let's say over the next 3 years, Villa win the FA Cup and the Europa League, for example, that'd be amazing. I'd love that.
Yeah.
We've not won a trophy in my lifetime. So to win 2 in the next 3 years would be unbelievable. One of them a European title as well. For Martinez, I don't think that's enough. I think he wants to win leagues. And Villa, obviously, at the moment, we're in a title race. And maybe in the next 3 years, we'll still be in title races and we'll be competing for the title genuinely. And if that's the case, that probably is enough for Martinez. But he wants to win leagues. He's won the World Cup. He wants to win the Champions League. That's a big, big ask for Villa to do that in Martinez's career that he's got left, which he's still got, 7-8 years at the top level anyway.
Yeah.
But he could do another couple of years at Villa, have those FA Cup and Europa League and think, this is pretty good, and then go to Real Madrid and win the absolute lot.
It's that whole Jack Grealish thing of like this player's cemented to the club. I feel he may leave at some point, but when he does, I'll happily follow him elsewhere. That hasn't, for me personally, that hasn't come to fruition. I see Grealish, I appreciate him as a player, but that connection isn't there. With Martinez, I think with what he's done, the fact is he's been declared the world's best player at Villa twice now, right? In the goalkeeping, he won the Yashin Award this year, and he won FIFA's the best.
Oh yes, I'm
sure last year. Different awards, by the way, but still
like
the
best, the FIFA Pro best men's team or whatever. Yeah.
The fact he's still at Villa and how bad they were, not under Emery, of course, when he was playing the World Cup, but how bad they were perceived as a team at that point, and the fact he's still here, that blows my mind. That's like a situation that is borderline impossible, because clubs, that happens in say 2004. Or 2002, 2006. Sorry, that happens then. He's gone. January in a bit. Doesn't happen. The fact he's still here is wild.
I'd probably be tempted by Douglas Luiz, but Martinez is a brilliant shout, as we've just talked about. So probably one of those two for me. The AVFC Faithful's got 2 questions. We'll do them in 2 separate ones, though. Who is the most underrated Villa player at the moment? That's a brilliant question, because it feels like all the players are rated because of how well we're doing. But is there one person consistently who goes under the radar a little bit?
I think Ollie Watkins is still underrated, if I'm completely honest.
You think?
Not in our own fan base. I do think in our own fan base as well sometimes. There's a whole myth of Ollie can't finish, he does this, he does that. He doesn't. I don't think he gets the recognition he deserves in England. I think there's things that separate him and Haaland. I think Watkins isn't always in that natural poacher's area to just get the easy goals. I think Ollie Watkins has to work very hard for his goals. I do think he's very underrated. Like, I think you will always be the position people want to replace, and I think he's good. He's sound.
There was a comment on our YouTube, I think, after Arsenal, bearing in mind we just won both games this week. Ollie Watkins has only got 8 goals in 16 games. That's not good enough. It's like, hang on a minute. Just beat Man City. Also, he didn't score. It's a goal every 2 games. That's pretty good. If he does that over a course of a season, he gets 16, 17 goals in the league.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good output for a Villa striker. And the rest of the team is scoring goals for fun. So not really on Ollie Watkins' shoulders to have to score 25 league goals to get Villa somewhere. The goals come from elsewhere, and the goals come from Ollie Watkins' build-up play as well. You might not necessarily get the assist sometimes, but he's involved in a move that leads to a goal elsewhere. So you're right, to an extent he's underrated, but it's difficult for me to actually give him an underrated tag given he's in the England squad and he's scoring the goals he is. I was going to go Luca Dean as a very obvious answer, but somebody who was probably going to be going out the door this window if Moreno didn't get injured at the back end of this season. I think Dean leaves because I think Moreno's the number one, and maybe we sign a younger understudy to be Moreno's replacement in a couple of years' time. He's 30, isn't he, Moreno? I think 31. But Luca Dean's come in and kept the shirt and made the shirt his own now. Moreno is fit and available, and obviously it's going to be Moreno's shirt to lose now because Dean's suspended for Brentford. So if Moreno comes in and plays well, it's Moreno's shirt for the foreseeable. But that would have been the plan. Unai Emery signed him in January. He was his man. He changed the way we played down that left-hand side with Jacob Ramsey. And Luca Dean probably didn't fit into that. He's not as forward-thinking as Moreno. He doesn't get to the byline and cut it back like Moreno does. He'll sit further, a little bit deeper, and with the time and space on the ball, he can find a great delivery. By the way, Luca Dean, he can put the ball on a sixpence from deep, and that's vastly underrated and something we've seen a lot this season already. But he doesn't play in the same way that Moreno does. So Villa don't play in the same way going forward and making chances. Yeah. I think it would have been very easy just to write Dean off and say he's a little bit older, he costs a lot of money, he's on high wages. If we can get rid of him, we should. I don't think anyone would have been expecting him to be involved in the same way that he has been this year. And it goes back to the same narrative that we said all along. If you'd have told us in that season preview back in July or August, whenever it was, that we'd be without Mings, Moreno and Buendia and Ramsey for the bulk of the season, you'd be thinking that massively affects us. Luca Dean's going to have to play 15, 16 games. Like, what the hell? That's no good. Like, that's going to be a serious problem for us. And it hasn't been. And Villa are where they are without all those players and having people like Luca Dean step up. So maybe underrated isn't the right word, but he's the one that jumps out to me as the obvious. Probably doesn't get the credit that he should have had this season. The AVFC Faithful's second question was Brussels sprouts on a Christmas dinner, yes or no?
Yeah, if they're done right, everyone just boils them. It's nasty crap. Roast them with some good olive oil and garlic and soy sauce or whatever. Just do something. Put bacon. Just do something with them. Don't boil them. If you boil them and put them on your dinner. This
is my point, though. If you've got to use good olive oil and butter and whatever else and bacon, it's not the sprout anymore, is it? It's all the other stuff that's good. It's the bacon that's good and the butter's good and the flavours that you put with the vegetable itself is still horrible. You just
that's like saying like you can just you can't just have a chicken breast raw. You got to use stuff to make it.
Well, not raw, but like if I had a carrot on its own, I would eat it and be pretty happy with that. If I had
if you roasted Brussels sprouts,
some kind of flavours there, but just a sprout on its own is terrible. Whatever you do, and it's only good because the other things you've just added to the dish has made it good.
No, they are like I would never choose to have them, but people's perception of them is because they are made crap. If you didn't season them and boiled them versus didn't season them and roast them, like the difference would be out of this world. You still got to like add the levels to it. You got to make it. It's Christmas dinner. It's not, it's not mashing something together on a Tuesday after work. You got to put some effort. You got to put some graft and passion into your work.
Oh, I love that. Some graft and passion into your sprouts.
If you're boiling your Christmas Day vegetables, step away,
I'll get that.
mate.
That's so Tim Sherwood. You've got to put graft and passion into your sprouts instead. That's James Maddison being the main man at a Sunday carvery. That is. You got to put passion into your sprouts. Christ.
No, passion into your cooking, into your life. If you haven't got it at the kitchen, where is it coming?
Yeah, all right, fair enough. Let's move on. Back to football from Matt. He says, with the turnaround Emery has resided over at Villa, do you think it's possible for any other team to experience the same rise using the same core as they have now if they get the right manager in place? Which I think is a really interesting question and one that I'm not really going to delve in too much to because I don't really care about any other sides. But it's an interesting point that you kind of look at the manager being an easy change to make to turn a club's fortunes around. That Man United obviously continuously struggled under whoever they have. Get rid of Ten Hag, get someone else in, they'll magically be better. And it doesn't always work like that. With Emery's case, what he's done to come in last year with Villa 17th and basically do what he's done this year with effectively the same group of players. No Moreno, who was a signing he made. He's not been available. He's got Pau Torres and Diaby, who are new signings this season. Diaby's been on the bench the last couple of games. But besides that, McGinn was struggling under Gerrard. Douglas Luiz started the season on the bench. Ollie Watkins was started the season on the bench last year against Bournemouth.
Yeah.
It was a toss-up between Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins. What a terrible comparison that is. I was fully on board with it. Maybe this is McGinn's last season. I don't think he's good enough for the Premier League, never mind top 3 in the Premier League. So for Emery to do what he's done with effectively the same group of players, I don't think many other managers do that. And also, let's not forget the injuries we've had this season. He's doing what he's doing this season with almost a lesser squad than last season. To have no Mings and no Buendia, Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey's barely kicked a ball this year. How good is he over the last 18 months or so? So to do what he's done is next level. And I don't think you'll see many managers go into the clubs that they get to. Poch at Chelsea, perfect example. Good manager in his own right, yeah, probably. But he's talking about needing more signings in January. Just the answer is, we just need to spend more money. Get the best out of what you've got. Good coaching is going to turn a club around. And honestly, I think Matt's hit the nail on the head that the turnaround that Emery's done is remarkable in its own right. And I don't think you'll see many managers do that. That they'll go into a club and fix what is already there rather than just going, well, we'll spend here, we'll spend here, we'll spend there.
So, yeah, I think it's a very hard question to answer because I think Emery, you can't compare anyone to Emery because he stands alone as the transformational job. I think this season there's a few interesting teams that don't compare to Emery and what he's done at Villa at all. But there's 2 teams that excite me as a neutral, and I think one of them now is Bournemouth. I in my season preview, I predicted them for the drop because of the changes and maybe adapting, and they have got that quickly under control. If Villa are the form team in the league, Bournemouth are up there as well. Like, it's 13 points between them, and Liverpool's on top with 14. The job he's done, Irela's done at Bournemouth is extremely good. It's not going to be the same as jumping from 16th to battling for the title within just over a year. But from definite relegation to being extremely exciting, potentially a wild card later in the season. The way they play and take to teams, especially how they pressed at Old Trafford, brilliant. But also, like another wild card shot is Everton for me. The situation they're in,
very well,
10-point deduction. That marks you straight off. 10-point deduction in any league in most teams is a death sentence. Like it's very hard mental barrier to get around. Everton are cruising in a really, really good way. They're the same form as Villa and Bournemouth, and they've probably got the biggest millstone around their neck with that, for having had that 10-point deduction, and they're already fighting their way out of it very well. So
yeah, they'll be safe this year. Everton by quite comfortably. I think they'll probably finish 12th or 13th maybe at a push, just given that 10-point deduction. They're on 13 at the moment. They'd be on 23 obviously without it, putting them 10th, a point behind West Ham, 3 points behind Brighton, 7 points behind Man United. No, 4 points behind Man United. Christ, I mean, they'd have done a very, very good job. Well, Deutsch and the players would have done a very good job to be at that point of the season, given the last couple of years they've had. Luton, Burnley and Sheffield United will be the 3 that go, I think. I don't think that they've got the quality to get anywhere near being safe. There's been a lot of talk about how Villa are safe this year because they're on 35 points, which is the total we had the year when we survived under Dean Smith on the last day, which is mad, isn't it? That we've got as many points already. I think we're safe now. I don't think any of the teams in the bottom 3 will get to 35. Never mind 30. 40, sorry.
I did the math yesterday. I haven't got it on me to figure it out, but the points per game now is very good. I think you get 81 points, or 83 points maybe. Which
yeah.
It wins you the title in one season since Google tells me, which is
that Leicester's one.
Yeah, so most seasons you're going to get second or third out of that, which is whatever. That's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, if you're talking in the title race, you'd probably be disappointed, but
that's only because of the standards that Liverpool and Man City have set over the last few years, though, that you need 90 odd points to win the league, 100 almost.
Yeah, but if you kind of went back to the era where Dean Smith was sacked and Gerrard joined, and you applied that points per game onto our current one, I think you still get 61, which is where we finished last season. So even if you just dropped off completely, you will still end up where they were last season, that's the biggest achievement of all. Is you could essentially stop and just finish exactly the historic season you had last season. you could still achieve that by just you crashing the car.
Yeah, got you.
Which we don't want to do, obviously,
Yeah.
but that's
We could
the
fall off a
levels of
cliff and still have one of our best seasons ever, basically, given the start we've
Yeah.
had, which is mad. I think I don't know what our record points is off the top of my head, but I saw it recently. Is it something like 64 points in the Premier League, I think? So we need something like another 30 to have our best Premier League season ever in terms of points return. I think that's right. I could be wrong, though. Right, let's move on. I've got a couple of questions to go. This one's from Gary, who says, should Villa look to spend relatively big in January to try and secure a top 4 slot, or keep hold of the money until the summer and hope that the current squad can get us there, and then purchase somebody in the summer when more top draw players may be available, especially if Villa have qualified for the Champions League? Now, we did a video with Dan Bardell last week, I think, or maybe the week before, of him saying Villa won't sign anyone in January. There's no need to, that we've got a good enough squad as is. And there was some backlash to that saying, what do you mean? We need a striker, we need this, we need a backup goalkeeper, we need a right back, etc., etc. But his point was that you don't upset the apple cart by signing somebody and upsetting the dressing room or changing things and that kind of thing, which I get. I understand that argument. However, that was before we beat Arsenal and Man City in a week and are genuinely in a title challenge until we're not. I'm not saying we're going to win it, but if Villa is still, I mean, look, the back end of 2023, there's 4 winnable games here to play, and Villa could genuinely be right up there come the start of the new year. If that is the case, have things changed that Villa think, okay, we need a £40 million winger to come in and secure what we're doing here, or do you stick with what you've got and kind of make that gamble on the summer instead?
I'm with the camp if you make the gamble in summer. I don't necessarily think that a title race for Villa, good God, what are we talking about, is defined by what you do in the January, because the players that we have are the ones who have decimated Manchester City. Yeah. And they are not easily replaced at this point because of the.
Is it just a bit of depth, do you think, that you sign a left winger to rotate with Zaniolo and Tielemans and that kind of thing? Maybe, yeah. If the right player is there.
I think it's like my ideal January is probably the really dorky one of players in the mold of John Duran, who are very exciting for the future and can come in, do a bit of a job now, but you're very much looking at next season and the season after to build that depth organically, the quality there, so you don't have to make the panic buys in the future. You know, the most disappointing thing for Villa this season would be to sustain a number of injuries, panic buy, replace them because they want to stay in the title fight. Then you've got a really Everton-like squad balance issue where you've got a lot of expensive players that you can't use, and your project has taken away. So because you got too excited too quickly, you hit the button, and instead of wondering whether you should have done it or you should have just stayed to the plan. The plan is working, as far as I'm concerned. Talking about aiming for 6th, 7th, 5th this season. Now you're talking about aiming for 4th. It's how you can keep up those levels, do better next season, do better the season after, add to that depth in a kind of organic and quality way.
Dan says, if we can replicate the same points, 10 out of 12, in the next 4 games, what position will we be? So the next 4 games we've just touched on, I think they're all very winnable. Sheffield United at home, Brentford away, Man United away on Boxing Day, and Burnley to end the season at home, to end the calendar year at home. 4 very much winnable games there. Obviously, you look at it as potential banana skins, Man United away, as much as they're not the greatest team in the world anymore. They still find ways to win somehow. The home games you look at as being very winnable, but I don't know, Friday night against Sheffield United, maybe they do something out of nowhere and upset us all. I don't really see it. If Villa are to get 9 points out of 12 from those even, they're going to be firmly within the top 4 still. Whether they're still being talked about in a title race or not will be dependent on what Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City do, effectively. But the weekend before Christmas is the potentially interesting one, that Villa obviously play Sheffield United at home on the Friday night. Liverpool and Arsenal play each other on the Saturday or the Sunday. One of those, at least, is going to be dropping points. If Villa have beaten Sheffield United, and let's say that's a 0-0 draw, Villa could be top at Christmas.
Yeah, I think it is very dependent on what happens to the 2 teams above us, and the idea of them dropping points a lot more than when they're playing each other is very hard to imagine, despite what we have just done over the last week. Not every team's Aston Villa, though, unfortunately. I think if you were to hold down 3rd and build a buffer there, that would be very solid. But I think 10 probably does get you 2nd, if I'm honest.
Mm.
I think, especially with the fact Liverpool and Arsenal play each other, and you said one team's got to drop points. If it's Arsenal that drop points, second. Liverpool drop points, you're probably still third, really.
How do you think those 4 games go for us if you have to do like Sheffield United win, Man United draw? Like, how do you actually have the fixtures down for you?
With the way it's going, and this is no disrespect to Sheffield United and Burnley, because every game is a tough game, really, in reality, isn't it? Sheffield United's got to be a win. Man United's a tough one because it could go either way. Bournemouth did a job on them. Our away form doesn't say win, it says draw. So probably go for a draw, if I'm honest. Was it Brentford was in there, wasn't it? Brentford's the first one.
Brentford next this weekend,
yeah.
No Louise, no Dean.
I think that's a draw. It's really the question if Villa can correct their away form really quickly to be not just mid-table away, but to be top tier away. If they do that, that's title challenge bang on. But to do that, you've got to beat Brentford. You've got to beat Man United. I think those are tough tasks. I can't remember us being brilliant ever away at Brentford.
No, it's difficult.
It's a new season, though. I'll go for a plucky win there, actually.
You've changed your tune in about a minute.
I'm thinking about it, mate. I think you get the win there. You run a high. Yeah, let's go for a 1-0. Then we go win at Sheffield United, draw at Man United, and win at Burnley.
Okay, so 10 points.
Yeah, I've done it.
So the form we've just done. Yeah, I think it's definitely doable. I also see a scenario where we win all 4 because we're that good at the moment. It's obviously things have to go your way. It goes without saying. But I also see a scenario where we get 9 because we lose to Man United because they could easily just do that and beat us 1-0 and really frustrate the life out of us. And it's still Man United at Old Trafford who somehow keep getting wins out of nowhere. Like, I feel like Man United have been terrible, but they're 6th. I think the important thing is, regardless of all this title race stuff of where Villa might be at the start of the new year, if there's still a 8-point swing to dropping out of the top 5, that's unbelievable. If we're doing what Newcastle did last year, and we're just always somehow in the top 4 because we just keep winning enough games. And even if we do lose to Brentford, we then go and win the next 3, and you just keep finding that way to be resilient with it. I think that's the key thing. Can we build a bit of a gap behind us rather than looking too far ahead? I think eventually Liverpool, Arsenal, or Man City will win the league. I actually think it might be Liverpool this year. I think I did go with Man City at the start of the season, but I think Liverpool might do it. But Villa have got more than enough to be the 4th best team this year, and possibly the 3rd best team. To be honest, I wouldn't put against us finishing 3rd. I've certainly got no doubts about us dropping out of the top 6 this season. Might even be like that we don't even drop down at all. Never mind, like at the end of the season, I feel like we might not drop out of the top 6 all season now, given the points gap we've already got. Now, you're talking about an 8-point swing. Villa have effectively got to lose 3 games while the other teams around and win all 3. They're going to lose 3 games in a row at any point. No,
not if there's a home game in there.
Exactly. Like we've done that once under Emery, and we've not done it since. Every time we lose, we bounce back with a win generally. So we might lose to Man United, but we'll win the next 2 or 3 after it because that's just what we do. And if we do that, we'll be in the top 4. It's literally as simple as that.
Easy. I mean, if you pick up the 2 wins at home, no matter how those 2 away games go, I feel like you can still feel good about that. I mean, Brentford away, Man United away, it's tough. These things are going to happen. Villa aren't necessarily that they are performing elite, but are they genuinely elite? And I think what separates that from Villa is, can you beat those 2 teams away? Maybe not. And
the final question of the show comes from David as we look ahead to Zrinjski Mostar very quickly. We've been going on for quite a while this morning, so we'll try and wrap up shortly. 2 big games this week on the back of an exhausting schedule recently. How far do you think Emery will go with resting players at Zrinjski Mostar to ensure we are as fresh as possible for a tough away game at Brentford? Personally, I think we should beat Zrinjski regardless, and I agree with that. I think Villa only need a point, do they, to top the group? So, I mean, you could rotate all 11 players and still get enough to nick a draw, but I do think we'll win regardless. So I would rotate as heavily as possible, to be honest. Maybe Martinez still has to play. Olsen wasn't on the bench, was he, for Arsenal? I'm not sure why. I saw somebody say that his partner might have had a baby recently, so maybe that's why. I've seen a couple of people say that, like, because Louise and Dina are suspended from Brentford, so obviously they'll be rested at the weekend, do they then play against Mostar? I don't know whether it's necessary, to be honest. Do they even need to travel? Give them an actual week's rest, do nothing this week and be fresh and fit for training next week as we build up to Sheffield United? What would you do? You're going to Zrinjski, aren't you, to actually see the game?
It's to play your full strength team, Emery. Give me a shot.
Exactly, yes. If you get there and see 11 changes, are you disappointed? Is that bad? Like, how would you feel about it?
No, like the circumstances of Villa dropping to second are quite tough because Alkmaar play Legia and they are chasing them down for second, and Villa collapsing at Mostar is probably hard to imagine. But it's a dead rubber game really for Mostar, but they would want a performance at home against a Premier League team. Their fans were very excited about the chance to play Villa when they came over. Don't see that changing much at home. I do see a few changes, but I don't think it's a case of players having the full time off, because I don't think there's days off at Villa. No, I think it is quite a demented, very rigid. There is one goal and it's Villa. No, there's no waking up, having a training session late to play your Xbox. It's like Villa's your baby, Villa's your family. So I don't think it's like rest at home, we'll do the job in Mostar. I think there'll be a few changes, but I think you'll see maybe because Luiz is suspended, I think you might see him play just to keep the levels up. The defence might change entirely. You might bring Longley, Chambers in. There's in terms of playing the youth players, it's very difficult because of the way the registration's set up. Because I don't think Irobinam, for example, or Kellyman qualify for that, so it's difficult. But I think
you're not going to see the kids play. You're not going to see a team of kids.
No, you'd see Zaniolo, Duran, Martinez, Longley, Chambers, Cash.
Like
you're still going to see like a very solid Villa team. I don't think it's not going to be entirely changed at all.
And is that enough to do the job, do you think?
Yeah, I think the weather over there, it seems fine. It's not going to, I think a lot of people have the imagination it's going to be snowing and like Moscow, like really freezing, horrible. But I think it'll be mostly okay. I think the most realistic expectation is probably a draw, if I'm honest. I do want Villa to win, but it's a fairly long trip. It's been a hectic schedule. Must have probably be well up for it. Yeah, I think a draw is fair, and I think that's fine. There's enough quality in the team to win, but a few changes probably do disrupt that, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I'm still backing us to win, regardless of the rotation. I think I get that it's a potential banana skin and all that kind of thing, but like you say, it's a dead rubber to an extent, because I think Villa will still get enough to finish and top the group, regardless of how they do it. And as much as we will be doing a post-match show for that on Thursday evening, it's a 5:45 kickoff in the UK, so we'll be live at 8 PM or whatever. However Villa get the job done, I don't care. As long as they top the group, I'm happy with it. If it's a scrappy 1-1 or we win 1-0 or whatever it is, I'm not going to read too much into the performance levels and who plays and that kind of thing. It's just about topping the group if you can, which I think, if Villa rotates Zaniolo, Moreno, Ramsey, Duran, Dendoncker, those kind of players, like to get them, Moreno, Ramsey, some fitness, that kind of thing, it's more than good enough to go to Mostar and win however much they're up for it, and whatever. The golfing quality should still be pretty clear. Yeah. So I'm backing Villa to win, and if not, at the worst case scenario, we draw. I don't think we go there and lose. So Villa should be topping the group, and that's that. I was just about to do the outro, but I've glanced down at my little whiteboard that I've got in front of me, which I normally make notes on for things to talk about, and I've not looked at it until an hour into this recording, but there's two things I want to mention very quickly. Everyone's favourite segment of the show. Here's something I saw this week and just wanted to talk about, where we get a chance to talk about anything else away from Aston Villa even. I just wanted to very quickly mention, just because I replied on Twitter, but I want to say it to the podcast audience as well. Somebody asked us about filming in person. I asked for iTunes reviews over the last couple of episodes, and I'll ask again if you can go over to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, I think it is now, and leave us a 5-star review and a little comment. That really helps us spread the podcast to a new audience, so I'm told. And since I've said that, we've had 10 or 12 new iTunes reviews this week, so thank you for doing that if you have. I asked this on Twitter, can you go and do a review? And somebody replied, Nick, he said, Dan, don't take this the wrong way, but I think the podcast needs to go up a notch somehow. It's a bit Teams conference call. The Square Ball, it's a Leeds podcast, I think, is a great example of how a modern football podcast should be. More people, higher production values, regular features, etc. You and Matt are both great and talk well, so please don't take this as a complete negative. I just think there's a gap in the market, somebody can fill that to become the absolute go-to podcast for all Villa fans. Now, I replied to Nick, and I felt I replied in a fair way, that it's just impossible. It's just impossible for us not to do them like this over the platform we use is called StreamYard. This is the only way we can do things. We've done it since the lockdown of 2020, and we've obviously grown the podcast since then, so it's clearly working to an extent. But I fully agree with what Nick says about better production values and different guests and features and stuff like that. I would absolutely love to be doing that kind of thing more. last year, at the back end of last season, we met up at Hockley Social Club probably once every 3 or 4 weeks, and we'd film 3 or 4 videos in bulk on the same day, and we'd spread those out over the course of a couple of weeks just to have this normal StreamYard set up. But every week we'd have like a video go out that we filmed in person. Or John came to my house one of the weeks and we did it here, and I think we did 4 videos in one day that came out like once a week over the course of a month. We want to do stuff like that more because we want to make the effort to do it, but meeting up once a month to do that is difficult. We've all got our own lives. Like, as much as the podcast is part of our day job, we've also got loads of other responsibilities that the podcast isn't full time for us. But Matt is extremely busy with much higher things in terms of job specification than doing a podcast. John writes an incredible amount of Villa content on a daily basis that he's working on days off and stuff. So getting him even for a couple of hours a week on a StreamYard like this is tough. So to film in person every week is impossible. Like the Man City and Arsenal podcasts we were doing at 9 p.m. and midnight. We're never going to film those if we do it in person. We just wouldn't do it, or we do it the next day, and it doesn't have the same impact. So it's a necessity that we have to do things like this. But we will make a more conscious effort to get together in person and film. Like I said, even if it's once a month, and we can spread those videos out a little bit, we will do that. I didn't want this section to come across as a dig out to Nick going, oh, no, Nick, you're wrong. I had this same reply to him on Twitter in 140 words, which is difficult. And I wanted to also say the same thing to people watching or listening, that yes, we'd love to up the production quality more and do it in person and things like that. But it's a necessity that we do 90% of our podcasts in this manner. And, you know, we do our best to make it look as good on screen as we can, or have good microphones and whatnot. But yeah, it's just, this is how it is, sadly. One final thing, James. So I've just done a lot of talking. I want to hand over to you to do a little almost tribute to Benjamin Zephaniah. I know that you wrote about him this week, who sadly passed away at the back end of last week. There was a great tribute to him at Villa Park for, was it the Arsenal game or the Man City game? It's Arsenal, I think, wasn't it?
It was Arsenal,
played the video on the big screen. There was whole ends in the sky and a big round of applause. Do you just want to have a couple of minutes to say your piece on him as well? Yeah,
he was a legend, really. And I don't think that's overstating the mark of the makeup of the man. He always put his kind of thoughts and beliefs very central to the person he was. They were always in his writing, and going back, I remember one of the first things I remember reading was the very kind of silly kids poem Talking Turkeys, which is very kind of leans into comedy a lot, leans into a lot of personal humor a lot, and it is silly, but there's a serious message at the heart of it, which is things, there's to what you eat, there's like feelings. I still eat chicken and turkey and meat, so I can't preach about this too much, but there was a very central serious message to that, as with most of his work. At school we grew up reading Face, around the class in English. We had these poems in exams. Zephaniah usually visited schools. There's a few people who are a bit older than me in the year groups above me who would have met him personally at schools. He was at my university a lot, and he was obviously a massive Aston Villa fan. I think what brings him to Villa, like what I really like about him as a Villa fan, is that it wasn't his entire personality, but yet he would still be the biggest Villa fan you knew, because of the way he could speak about it, reel off the facts. He was a person first, Villa fan second, but it was so central to his being. But it didn't come out a lot, but when it did come out, it was like a firework. The way he spoke about the West Brom video they played is incredible. The story he relates is a story that everyone can kind of like emphasize with, like being torn between two clubs on a boundary. In Handsworth, when I used to grow up and knock around on the Soho Road with my girlfriend at the time, we went to the library. They wouldn't stop handing you Zephaniah stuff, the way they spoke about the man. And I think, there needs to be statues of that bloke in Birmingham, because he's probably, bar Ozzy Osbourne and a few others, he's probably Birmingham's best export to the world. A man who could bring around those serious messages in both a serious and silly way to get to an audience, to reach across to audiences, to reach across prejudice and audiences he wouldn't normally speak to. I think is a lesson for us all.
Yeah, a lovely tribute, James, and our thoughts for everyone at the podcast and Villa fans who go out to his family and friends at a really horrible time. James, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. We'll end with a very quick outro just to say thank you for everyone for your support over the last couple of weeks. Our numbers and people tuning in on a weekly basis is brilliant to see, so thank you for that. I've really enjoyed doing this podcast today, but quite a somber note to end on. So thank you very much, everyone, for watching this one. We'll be back on Thursday with a post-match reaction for Zrinjski Mostar. So we'll see you all then. Cheers, everyone.